Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about the chaos that is the Giants coaching staff. I'm your host, Sal, here with my co-host, Monty. What's going on, man?
What's going on is Jeff Stoutland is a Giant.
Apparently. For those who don't know, there's been some breaking news tonight. The Philadelphia Eagles longtime O-line coach, Jeff Stoutland, head of Stoutland University, has decided to not coach for the Eagles anymore. And we're still parsing through the details of what that means, but I think it sounds like the Eagles are trying to spin it like he's not coaching, but he's staying with the organization. It sounds to me like he wants out when you read his own commentary about it under the tweet he put out. And I think he'd like to keep coaching. So I think there's a lot to be figured out here, but I'm sure that teams are calling, including John Harbaugh and the Giants, to find out what his availability is. We'll get to that. All right. So for, just catching everybody up on what's been going on. Fun week. Last time we were here, I think we were going through candidates. I think Matt Nagy had just, not Matt Nagy. Todd Monken had just taken the job with the Browns. We went through a bunch of candidates. Long story short, the Giants kept everything really under wraps. Nobody had any idea, or at least didn't report like they had any idea, that they were seriously considering or even interviewing the guy they actually did hire yesterday, Matt Nagy. So let's start there. Matt Nagy is the new offensive coordinator of the Giants. Monty, tell the good people here about Matt Nagy and how excited you are for the hire.
How excited I'll be very excited about Matt Nagy if he gets this Jeff Stoutland. But as far as Matt Nagy, I mean, look, not even a guy we talked about not even a guy we brought up last time. So an interesting hire. I mean, he is an Andy Reid disciple. We tried that last time with Mike Kafka. That's obviously a tree that we respect as an organization. Who wouldn't? Andy Reid's one of the greatest coaches that this generation. And Matt Nagy is somebody who he has a lot of respect for, and he says like the best assistant he's ever had. Is very strong words for him, and apparently Harbaugh, who worked underneath Andy Reid, got all that from Andy Reid, spoke him up and told him to hire him basically. And it's probably a guy we should have talked about more because he fits the mold of a John Harbaugh hire perfectly. And we talked about this last week because we talked about that with Cliff Kingsbury about he likes former head coaches, he likes experienced OCs and things along those lines. And you got that in Matt Nagy. You and I can talk about the pros and cons of it. I would say my main takeaway is that I felt it was a very underwhelming hire. That was how I felt about it. I don't necessarily think it's a bad hire, but I felt it was underwhelming and a lot of question marks.
Yeah, I think I've been a little bit more measured and positive about the hire. And I think I understand why people feel maybe underwhelmed by it when, you're talking about going from Todd Monken, you're dreaming about guys like Mike McDaniel before that. And then, maybe the excitement of a younger guy like Davis Webb or Charlie Weiss Jr. Right. Huh?
Or my boy Cliff.
Well, yeah. Or my guy, the egg. But yeah, who's the passing coordinator now for the Falcons. But I think this is where I think people are freaking out for a little bit too much. Part of the reason Matt Nagy is underwhelming and unexciting to people is really just because he has a resume. And the other guys that people are excited about, most of them don't have a resume. Cliff does. But the other guys just don't. You don't know what they are. I have no idea what Davis Webb is as an offensive coordinator, and neither do you. I have no idea what Charlie Weiss Jr. looks like in the NFL level, and neither do you. We're just all excited by the young mind, and that's fine. But you have seen Matt Nagy as an offensive play caller on the Bears as head coach. You've seen him as a coordinator for the Chiefs. And I think people feel like, oh, well, we should have done better. But, I think that he's actually a pretty good hire, mainly because I feel like there's no way the Giants went through this process carefully and methodically, and came out of this with just like, oh, well, we'll just settle on Matt Nagy because that's who's there. I think there's some of the guys they wanted were not available, but ultimately I think they don't hire him unless they feel very confident in his ability to work with Harbaugh and Jackson Dart specifically.
Yeah. I don't know. The one thing I will push back a little bit on there is I definitely understand the argument in general of the, people definitely shit on like the ex-head coach and kind of forget who the offensive coordinator is, like how good they were as a coordinator because they get tainted by, what they were as a head coach. I'm a big believer in that, and I think that happens all the time. The issue with Nagy is that's not necessarily the case. He was a question mark as an OC, then he kind of failed as a head coach, and he's still kind of a question mark at OC. It's not like a guy who is this like phenomenal play calling offensive coordinator who failed at head coach, and it's like, well, you can still be a good OC. So I think he's honestly, I think he's as much of a question mark as any of these other guys. You haven't ever really seen Matt Nagy as a play calling offensive coordinator. You've seen him as a play calling head coach, and you've seen it with really bad personnel. So, you can sit here and say, hey, was that him or was it his personnel? Was that him as a head coach, or was that, did he become overwhelmed, but he could have been a good play caller? So, there's a lot of questions to be answered for me. So I personally think he is, for better or worse, when we're discussing this, he is a big question mark.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, right? Like, you don't know what he's going to be as an offensive play caller and just a pure offensive coordinator working in the John Harbaugh system, working with Jackson Dart. I think those are all fair criticisms, but there's something to be said about a guy who's had a lot of experience, both good and bad, especially bad experiences. If you can learn from them, and you can bring that wisdom with you, and you actually improve upon yourself, I'm actually kind of excited by that. Yeah. Nevertheless, he is an experienced play caller, and I think that is something that we talked about John Harbaugh valuing. He wants guys. He typically has hired guys who have called plays before. And I think that's something that he, and in the end, I just feel like he thinks that's a valuable tool to have. I think they feel like Nagy can work with a quarterback. Otherwise they wouldn't have hired him. I'm sure that Nagy and Jackson Dart were on the same page here. I'm confident about that. So we'll see how it goes. I'm very curious to see how it goes. Let's talk about his scheme for a little bit, because I want to get into the other hires they made, and there's some good ones that are mentioned here, and we definitely want to talk about the O-line. But tell me why don't you explain to those people who are viewing what you can to explain the Matt Nagy offense and how it might fit in here with the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, the Matt Nagy offense is the Andy Reid offense, and he obviously puts his own twist on it. But it's a West Coast offense. It all comes down from Bill Walsh. That's the ultimate Bill Walsh universe that Andy Reid is a part of. It's not the Shanahan tree. It's it's another branch off of the Walsh tree. A little bit more. It's a little bit start out as a little bit more of a traditional West Coast, but Andy Reid has kind of evolved it into his own thing. Him and Nagy have really adopted the RPOs. They're very, very heavy in RPOs, very heavy in motions, and using jet sweeps, and I think a criticism that Nagy gets that I also think Andy Reid gets to some extent is that they get a little bit too cute. Like you can see that with Andy Reid, and usually he's very good and makes it work, but they definitely lean on doing kind of these big plays to try to like draw something up when they don't necessarily could just go the easy yards. But I do think in general it's a really QB friendly offense. I think I don't know. It's hard to go because it's hard. We're talking about Andy Reid's side of it, and we're also talking about Nagy's side of his head coach. I do think Matt Nagy made things a little bit more complicated than he needed to be. You heard that criticism in Chicago, but in general, Andy Reid's system is considered pretty QB friendly. A lot of zone runs like that we've talked about with other West Coast guys. A lot of horizontal passing concepts and things along those lines. I don't know. What do you got on it, Sal?
Yeah, I think so. Fundamentally, I think it's important to say that most NFL offenses nowadays have incorporated a lot of the elements of the original Bill Walsh West Coast offense. I don't think there's any offense that exists that doesn't incorporate a lot of it at this point, because it's just proven to be one of the more efficient offenses in the NFL.
Yeah.
So that, play design and play calls, I don't know if there's a huge variation from, system to system. There are subtle variations from coach to coach. So that's number one. But this is a kind of newer version of the West Coast system. It came through the Andy Reid tree that branched off the Bill Walsh system, whereas the McVay Shanahan stuff probably came more from the Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak side of things. That's a slightly different variation of that original offense. But fundamentally, it is an offense that incorporates a lot of short passing and a lot of timing. I mean, I think that's a big part of this is, from a passing concept standpoint, there's going to be a lot of short stuff, but, a lot of throws either at or just past the line of scrimmage to keep the offense moving, right? Fundamentally, a lot of this offense is get the ball out quick, get it to a playmaker, get it in his hand, keep the chains moving. And that's a lot of the plays. But what varies here with the way Nagy likes to call it is it's very RPO heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not seen in every West Coast system. So it's very reliant on a quarterback who's an athlete, taking advantage of his athleticism in space, moving around, and often throwing the ball off script or off platform. That's something that should be appealing for us with the way Jackson Dart plays football and how good he is at those things. He does incorporate elements of air raid, where he drives the ball down the field vertically outside the numbers. And I think it's kind of a combination of the traditional, like, horizontal based West Coast offense, that's middle of the field stuff, and elements of air raid on the outside, but using a lot of RPOs. It's a ton of shotgun to operate this system. I mean, it's like 80-something% shotgun formation, which, again, that's very consistent with what Jackson Dart already does.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot less under center. So if you wanted to see Jackson Dart develop more under center, I'm not sure you're going to see that much more of it in this offense. Might be just about the same as it was before. There is some play action, but it's mostly based off shotgun, right? I mean, It's like shotgun type style stuff. So those are kind of the key elements. I think the biggest element here, though, and I think this is something that's not discussed enough when we're talking about shifting from more of like the Earhart Perkins type offense model, which we're coming from the Brian Dable world, to the West Coast offense, is the way plays are structured and called, especially at the line of scrimmage. This is way more quarterback centric. So I think most people know that Brian Dable tries to simplify his play calls to like one or two words, right? Like he'll have an entire play call that incorporates everything from, the route concepts, the formation, the line, the shifts, everything, the strength, all of it in like one or two words. To do that, every specific play design has to have its own specific word and its own play sheet. And there's not you just have to memorize that. So I think he had like a 700 and something page playbook, something like that, right? that players had to memorize. In the West Coast offense, the fundamental difference is all of those concepts are usually interchangeable depending on how you call the plays, right? So in one play call, the quarterback will call, for example, they'll call the line shift, they'll call the formation and the strength, the variation of the formation, they'll call motion or no motion, they'll call the run direction and pass protection, they'll call the runner, whether it's a run or pass concept, they'll call the snap count. All of that will be in one play call. So a basic call would be something like double right 200 jet dragon. All right, like that's the kind of, and that tells the team, everybody in the huddle, their responsibility. So you can have variations of that play, but the quarterback's going to call it in the huddle or at the line, and receivers should know what their responsibility is based on what he says. The line has to know what they're doing. So it's a lot of emphasis on the quarterback having control at the line of scrimmage and in the huddle, and using variation that way. I think it's a more intuitive tool for quarterbacks personally, because as they get more mature, they're able to use things like this as opposed to just memorizing one word personally, because I think when you're doing the one word memorization stuff, your quarterback can master it. But what if one guy on the team, one receiver, doesn't remember exactly that play, right? Or runs a slightly different variation of it. Like there is a learning curve to that. So I prefer this system. I think Jackson Dart learning it is going to be important. I'm not sure if he used this kind of nomenclature in college. I don't believe they did, but it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but I think ultimately it benefits him. So I think learning the West Coast system, the way the nomenclature works, is going to be big for him. I also think something we talked about when we scouted Jackson Dart a couple of years ago is that we thought he would benefit from a West Coast system where he's actually driving the ball in the middle of the field, right? Mm-hmm. He's using the middle of the field and horizontal concepts more, because when we saw him do it, he was really good at it, right? He was just a better thrower of the football. He could set his foot, drive the football, get velocity in tighter windows, and he was good at things like reading leverage and understanding things, concepts like that in the middle of the field. I think you'll see more of that from him in this offense. So, and it's a little long-winded, but those are the kind of things I'm excited about.
Yeah, no, I mean, well said. The West Coast offense in general is something that you and I are both very high on. Have been wanted the Giants to embrace for a while now. And I think although both of us prefer a little bit more of the Shanahan branch, obviously Andy Reid is phenomenal in his own right, but just has more success with more coaches. Just embracing it in general, I think, is a good fit for Jackson Dart. You mentioned that the way that Nagy does it, it's a lot of shotgun, which I think brings some good and bad. Obviously Jackson Dart needs to learn how to play under center more, but it's something he clearly, to me, didn't look comfortable doing last year. And I think that the fact that he can play out of the shotgun will help him be a little bit more comfortable. I think the downside of that, though, is I really do think it hurts your running game. And you've seen how much Nagy's run game has struggled. I mean, when you're sitting 3rd and 1 and you're running out of shotgun, I mean, I hate that shit. Like, I hate it. Like if you're 1 yard, you don't want to be starting from 5 yards back, and that's the type of shit that people complained about in Chicago. Other things like, people did complain about how he kind of overcomplicated the offense and things along those lines. But, to your point, we can bring up the things that he did wrong and some very, very fair criticisms that offense really kind of started to fall apart from that first year where they saw some success. But, does Nagy learn from this? I know one video that came out, I watched it. It was somewhat interesting, but the concept I think was interesting was that apparently Nagy got a 45-page review from former coaches he worked with, former players, whether good or bad, guys he's fired and cut and things along those lines included, and basically got anonymous reviews of him as a coach. And, he used that to help learn from it and see where his deficiencies are. So, there is certainly aspects of Nagy that you could see it working out better this time around. And also, we mentioned earlier, it's this time around isn't really fair to say because you're not asking him to be head coach. We're asking him to be a play calling offensive coordinator for the first time in his career.
Yeah. And that might be easier for him. Right. I think it's a little, he's coming from a weird place, right? When he's with Andy Reid, he's there to help design the offense and get the team ready to play football on Sunday, right? He's the coach who does all the work throughout the week to prepare the team. Andy Reid's the CEO all week. He and Andy come up with the offensive game plan. But during the games, Andy is, it's like a weird thing. Andy's deciding what the plays and the play sequence, and he's relaying it, and then Nagy is kind of then relaying it to the quarterback a lot, right? I think that's how they do it. It's but fundamentally, Andy Reid is the one making the executive decision on play calling during games. He has handed it off in the past to Nagy in both his stints as offensive coordinator to some real success when he's done it. But fundamentally, that's his job there. With the Bears, he was calling plays, but he's supposed to be managing, and he talked about this, managing the clock, managing the refs. It's a different experience. When you're actually the play caller and the offensive coordinator, I think it's a responsibility that is very unique and to what he has experienced so far. I think he'll be more comfortable doing it now that he's not dealing with the head coaching, burden. So I think he'll be fine. Honestly, I think he'll be fine doing it. I've listened to his interviews. I think he's learned a decent amount, and I'm going to stay bullish on this. But to your point, the run game stuff is a problem, and you can't you can't just ignore it, right? It was a problem in his game. And
even
I think
as
you and
best,
I,
it was a problem.
yeah. And to be fair, like the Kansas City Chiefs, the way they run their offense by design has limited their ability to be a highly productive run team, right? Like a lot of it is based on short passing to complement to kind of be the run game,
Yeah.
you know, and that, yeah, I mean, and that's kind of a feature of like a more traditional West Coast offense, but they haven't had the greatest run game. Some of that is personnel, but I think it's fair to say that this is where you have a guy like Nagy, and I think for the reasons I said and you stated, like there are elements of his game using every blade of grass, a lot like Monken, incorporating horizontal concepts with a little bit of air raid, the West Coast nomenclature. There's things about his game that I think match Dart and take advantage of his skills, especially the RPO stuff. And you can see it working in the passing game. But if the weakness is in the run game, how do you complement a guy like Matt Nagy to make this a maximal benefit? And we talked about it the second he was hired. I said to you right away, I was like, well, what if we just hired Greg Roman as our run game coordinator, right? And this was yesterday. So, bear with me. But, right. We'll get to. But what do you think? I mean, do you feel a lot better about the run game when you're talking about, one, if you brought in a guy like Greg Roman, who's a good run game coordinator, and two, this is a John Harbaugh team. Ultimately, he's the head coach, and his history is to have a power football, dominant trenches, run game type team. When you put those two together, do you really believe we're going to struggle that much in the run game? I don't think Harbaugh would leave it to chance. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. I think getting a run game coordinator would be big. It's something that the Giants haven't really done. We've been cheap and kind of, haven't hired the pass and run game coordinators and, added another important role on the staff. And I think that would be really big for Matt Nagy to have that because it's a spot he struggled. And I agree, having John Harbaugh, who's had the best running offense in the NFL basically over his entire career, like on average, he's been a phenomenal running football team. So, do we expect that to all fall apart under Matt Nagy? I wouldn't say fall apart, but could it struggle? I'm not, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if I could tell you for sure. My hope would be that those two things would be enough to have a good running game, but I don't know. I think Andy Reid he's with Andy Reid and he's had great running games in the past. For example, I looked at, the one time he did call plays as an offensive coordinator was in 2017, and he got play calling from week 13 on. And I went and I looked up like his EPA and things along those lines over the times and compared the two, Andy Reid versus him. And I'll tell you, Nagy did a great job in comparison. He had like better EPA per play, better success rate, better EPA per drop back.
They were scoring more points.
Scoring more points, but the running game dropped significantly. So even then, even at his best, even under Andy Reid, he still struggled in the run game. So that makes me concerned.
It's fair.
That was 10 years ago, though.
Yeah, I think the right way to talk about this is to have like just an honest assessment of what's good and what's bad, as opposed to I'm upset or I'm angry or I'm making fun of it or I'm super enthusiastic. I think discussing like what the guy has proven that he can bring right off the bat and how it fits Jackson Dart in the offense is important. And just discussing what are your weaknesses, where have you struggled is important. I'm sure John Harbaugh is aware of that, right? And the question is, how do you complement those things? And again, I think a run game coordinator like a Greg Roman or someone else is important here. And I think this is where the rest of the hires start to like really, really matter. So let's get to some of the other guys. Right before they announced Nagy, the Giants announced that they had hired Grant Newsome as their assistant O-line coach. And this, I was way more excited for this than I think like the average Giants fan, but that's because
you were like, I'm getting Kurt Anderson.
Well, I think I know where, because I think I know where this is going, right? And so Grant Newsome, for those who don't know, was a 4-star recruit, actually from my neck of the woods, from the Northern Virginia area where I live, and went off to Michigan and as an offensive tackle. He actually played high school. He went to a private prep school in New Jersey, even though he grew up, Northern Virginia. Recruited to Michigan, under Jim Harbaugh. And after a couple of years, had a gruesome. Do you remember his injury? It was horrible.
Mm-mm.
Like he was playing Wisconsin, and he had this awful knee dislocation where he tore 3 ligaments in his knee, his tibia, which is the big bone in the lower leg, fractured. You know how hard it is to break that? It's awful. So he fractured the tibia. He tore 3 ligaments in the knee. He damaged multiple nerves, and he actually destroyed his artery, the popliteal artery behind the knee. Yeah, it was a massive injury. Like his leg, like he almost lost his leg over this, you know. So it ended his career. He tried to rehab, and after a year or two, he called it quits. He just couldn't play football again. And then after he finished, he went back as a grad assistant, worked his way up. He's only 28 years old. He was an assistant with Michigan last year. He's been viewed widely across the Michigan program. He was their O-line coach in 24 and 25, like under Sharon Moore. Yeah. But and before that, he was a tight ends coach for a couple of years there. But he has been viewed as like a rising star, a young rising star in the offensive line coaching world. And, you know, I mean, this guy did a really good job. So Michigan had a bunch of redshirt freshmen this year playing, if you watch Michigan football, and they were one of the best O-lines in the country. He took a bunch of kids off that weren't ready and had them playing at the highest level. That, you know, O-line play was not one of the reasons they struggled as a program. He's a good coach, you know, and I mean, I think some Michigan fans felt he was a little in over his head. There's a lot to handle, but he did a very good job, I thought. And I think his trajectory is so like upward that I think John Harbaugh saw that. He knows from his brother, and said, I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to get him to the NFL, and I'm going to get him on my staff in some capacity. And he seems like the eventual heir apparent to be our O-line coach at some point in the future. I think that's, you know, so get to know the name Grant Newsome. If things go well here, I think he's the guy who's eventually going to be our O-line coach. But he already brings some really good stuff from Michigan, and he's very young. He's 28. And by all accounts, this is a really good human being, you know, and he's just like he's a good dude. I think people will love having him around. So I was excited because I thought it meant you're grooming somebody for the future, which means you're bringing somebody else in now above him that's going to be a seasoned veteran to help build this in, and you're going to build a run game from there. And you pointed out right away, you connected the dots between Matt Nagy and Newsome and John Harbaugh and came up with the name that you put out yesterday. And we find out today that he's very much in the candidacy for being the Giants O-line coach, and that's Juan Castillo.
Yep.
So tell the good people here about Juan Castillo.
Yeah, I mean, Juan Castillo, he worked for Andy Reid in Philadelphia while John Harbaugh was on the staff. And then he, in addition, when I don't think he was there with Matt Nagy in Philly, but he was there with Harbaugh, and no, he was. He stayed in Philadelphia, I believe, for a couple of years. Then Harbaugh brought him to Baltimore at one point.
2013.
Yes, and he was Harbaugh's O-line coach. And then Nagy brought him to Chicago with them, and he was Chicago's O-line coach. And then he went to Michigan, and then he coached with Grant Newsome on Michigan under Sharon Moore.
You skipped a couple of steps. I mean, he was so he was the Eagles O-line coach for 12 years, from 98 to 2010. And then the story is that Andy Reid, he's known to be a strict disciplinarian, right? He's like an old school tyrant of a coach. And he runs a very tight ship to the point where he's, I think, kind of feared. And the Eagles defense was kind of a shit show and a mess. So Andy Reid asked him to become defensive coordinator because he thought that he would bring that level of strict disciplinarian control over that defense and accountability to get under control. Didn't work out because he's not a defensive coach, you know, but he did spend 2 years as a DC. Then he went to the Ravens, and I think he had a stopover with the Bills as an O-line coach for a bit. Then he went off to Michigan as an analyst. Then he went to the Bears. That's when he met 2020 and 2021. He was with Matt Nagy in Chicago. Those 2 years, he was his O-line coach before. Then he bounced around a little bit. Tight ends coach of the Commanders in 22, run game coordinator with the Commanders in 23. These are the Ron Rivera years.
Mm-hmm.
24, he goes to UCLA to be their O-line coach. I believe he followed, if I'm not mistaken, Eric Bieniemy to UCLA. Right. And then 2025, he was the senior assistant offensive line coach of Michigan. That's when he worked with Newsome, and he just took a job to be the O-line coach at Syracuse. But, you know, he's been bounced around a little bit the last several years.
Yep. And I mean, I think that the fact that Andy Reid flipped him from O-line to defense that he hasn't coached since he was a high school coach goes to show the type of respect he had for him as a coach.
Yeah. He's old school. He's a big, strict disciplinarian type coach, and I think he's a guy who's respected. You know, he's 63. No, I'm sorry, he's 66. You know, so he's an older coach, but again, he's a guy who's connected and worked directly with Newsome. So he would be the kind of coach where if you hired him as your line coach, if that's where you settled, I think he's a good coach. I honestly think he's a very good coach. He's one of the better ones out there. He really is. I think you could feel comfortable that he would get this line in pretty tip-top shape, but that he would eventually be handing the reins over to Newsome to take over this line, probably within a year or two. It would be my guess.
Yeah, I would hope it's probably true. I think the longer time that Newsome could sit underneath a veteran O-line coach would be the better, but we'll see. And maybe the other guy would give us more time, but we'll talk about him in a second. But yeah, I mean, I think Juan Castillo is interesting. I pulled up his PFF his O-lines rankings from PFF. Since they started doing these lists was 2009. So he went 2009 9th, 2010 17th, 2014 3rd, 2015 11th, 2016 9th, 2017 7th, 2018 26th. Then he went to Chicago and he was 20 and 22. So there was a few not great years there at the end, but for a majority of his career, he was a pretty consistent top 10 O-line coach.
Yeah. I would have zero problem with hiring Juan Castillo as our O-line coach, understanding the programmatic goal here. And I think, in my opinion, if you're hiring Juan Castillo as your O-line coach, he's just like a strict technique-based, like if you read his stuff that he's talked about, he's very much a technician coach, right? He sits there, he teaches the fundamentals, the techniques of blocking. He emphasizes like one-on-one blocking and mastering your own ability to win on an island. And then he incorporates how winning on your own and beating your man is going to work in tandem with your teammates on the line. So he's a very like process-oriented, technical type coach and very, very strict about how he does it. I think what you would expect from a guy like him is you don't have a lot of mistakes from a well-coached O-line under this guy. I think guys know their assignment, they're well-versed. And I think you're, like any other O-line, if you have the talent, it can go really far. But I don't think you would see a lot of breakdowns with a guy like him. And technically that's important. So I think he's a good coach. What I do think about him though, is I'm not so sure I view him as like a run game coordinator type O-line coach. No. He's very much he's a technical O-line coach, right? He's about the lineman. So if you hire him and you have Newsome, who are focusing on the development of the linemen, they're not run game coordinators. You would still probably want to bring in a run game coordinator. And I think that's where a guy like Greg Roman could be in play for the Giants. I don't care that we haven't heard his name connected with the Giants interviewing now. We didn't hear Matt Nagy's name, and he's our OC now. So I have he interviewed with the Jets job for OC. Greg Roman did. I think there's no way in hell he came all the way to New Jersey, interviewed with the Jets, and he didn't meet with John Harbaugh to interview for a job here too, right? So he's in play, I think. And now I will get to your topic of the day. 30-something minutes in.
Let's stop burying the lead here.
I'm just gonna let you cook. So just go right ahead and say what you got to say.
So we like Juan Castillo. He would be a solid hire, but the guy that the New York Giants need to go get. Staten Island native, my favorite borough, Staten Island native, Jeff Stoutland was supposedly, stepped down from the Philadelphia Eagles is probably the right wording to use right now. He hasn't officially left the organization, but he stepped down as O-line coach, and they're still kind of figuring that out. they took away his run game coordinator and role, and they're not going to give that back to him. And there seem to be some issues with him and the team. And, he put out a statement basically that he was stepping away and he wasn't going to be a part of the Philadelphia Eagles anymore. Philadelphia Eagles basically came out and said that, they still would like to have, basically they still like to have him as a part of the organization in any role. He's still here if he wants a job, is what it sounds like. And, Jordan Raanan reported that he's heard that he won't be coaching this year. And maybe that's true, but it seems there's going to be a lot of people out there who are reporting that there is going to be a lot of NFL teams that are going to try to get him and make him change his mind. And I think if you can convince Jeff Stoutland to coach this year and to leave the Philadelphia Eagles, there is no team that makes more sense than the New York Giants. You can make the connections. I know Harbaugh's never directly coached with Stoutland. Nagy's never directly coached with Stoutland. They just missed each other in Philadelphia, but there is the Philadelphia connection. There's a lot of common people that they've worked with. And I think the most important thing is Stoutland, an older guy at his age. He has kids who work in Philadelphia, live in Philadelphia. His family is from Staten Island. His wife's family is from Staten Island. Like, it was nowhere makes more sense for him than to go to New York, where he can be close to some family that he hasn't been close to in a long time. And it's still a drive away from his kids. Any other spot is going to be a plane ride. And I think that's going to be important to a guy like him at this point. You've heard that with like Mike Munchak. Mike Munchak left the Steelers for that reason, and he's not in the NFL right now because he'll only take a job in about 2 places. Another thing I'm going to add, because I've seen this on Twitter a lot, and I just want to clarify here. There is a world that the Giants could get Jeff Stoutland, even if the Eagles don't want him to go here. And that is basically just if the Eagles allow Jeff Stoutland to interview for O-line coaches. And basically how the rule works is you either allow a coach to interview for a lateral move or you don't allow him. There is no, I'm going to let him interview with the Jets, but not the Giants. That's not how the rule works. That's why with, like, for example, I'm sure Giants fans were familiar with Patrick Graham. We allowed him to interview with the Steelers. Then we hired Brian Dable. Brian Dable wanted to keep Patrick Graham. Then we could not stop the Raiders from interviewing Patrick Graham and bring him as a scorer because we already approved the lateral interviews for that offseason. So that's basically, from my understanding, assistance works the exact same way. I asked Dan Duggan on that, and he didn't confirm it works for assistants that way, but that he said you have to double check, but he said that is his understanding, is that's how it works. So that's basically how it would happen. It's basically, I don't expect the Eagles to hold Jeff Stoutland hostage if he wants to coach somewhere else. We will see if he does want to coach somewhere else. We'll see if the Eagles can make this work. But if he does choose to go somewhere else and wants to coach this year, I do think that there's a world the Giants are the team he goes to. I think it makes a lot of sense. And we've heard how much not the exact number, but we've heard that John Harbaugh get a large sum of money to build his staff with. This is where you put the money. You give him run game coordinator, which he should have never been taken away from a year before. Saquon Barkley should have won MVP. What went to the Super Bowl off his back. They've always had good run games under Jeff Stoutland. Just because their offensive coordinator was shitty, they took it away from him. Jeff Stoutland is one of the greatest O-line coaches to ever live. He would change the Giants. This would be a huge hire. That's like, cannot emphasize how good Jeff Stoutland is. He is truly a top 10 coach in the NFL, in my opinion.
Before I follow up that incredible speech, I'm going to ask the number of people in here. We have 42 on YouTube and over 1,200 total viewers. Thank you guys for joining us. If you get a chance, please hit the like button on YouTube. Hit the like button and subscribe to He's a Giant Pod if you haven't already. We appreciate you guys. Our subscribers have gone up recently, so please subscribe, hit the like button, share the feed on YouTube, share it on YouTube, on Twitter with your friends, on whatever social media app you use. You can always follow us at He's a Giant Pod, at MONTECRI5TO, at Queens_guy. I just had to get that out since we have lots of people here. All right, thank you. So let's talk about you're done showing your love for Jeff Stoutland. Before I go into some deeper details, I do want you to publicly apologize on our live stream to the good people of Staten Island, especially K-Mac and Peter Rendozo, who have been subject to your threats for months. These are good people. I mean, and I want the world to know that I was driving onto the Verrazano Bridge, going from Brooklyn into Staten Island, literally on the bridge, and Monty threatened to blow up Staten Island as I was on the bridge. Allegedly. All because I happened to say the words Lou Anaramo. So I want you to publicly apologize to the good people of Staten Island, home of Jeff Stoutland, and our new VP of player personnel. So go ahead and apologize to them.
I will. Staten Island deserves my apologies. I am very sorry to the people of Staten Island. As I said, the best New York City borough, the football capital of the world, Staten Island. My apologies. I was being irrational. I thought Lou Anarumo, who's a great defensive coordinator, was going to be our head coach, but we got John Harbaugh. Everybody's happy. And, to the great borough of Staten Island, I'm sorry.
Good people of Staten Island, you are now safe. as is my drive to New York if I ever take the Verrazano. All right. Let's talk about, I want to get into the X's and O's of Jeff Stoutland, but I also want to talk about what the hell is going on in Philadelphia that got us here. Because we've been hearing rumblings that Stoutland may be on the outs for weeks now. And it's like, wait a minute, watch out for this. I mean, Anthony's talked about it. Anthony Betts, shout out Anthony Betts. Connor Hughes had a tweet about, kind of alluding to this. Hey, Giant fans, before you freak out about Carmelo, there may be some really good veteran O-line coaches who might shake free. And he was clearly referring to this.
Connor's been a low-key heater this offseason. He's been killing it.
He's been awesome. He's obviously got good sources. So there's been something brewing in Philly, and now the report comes out tonight on ESPN, by Alan Herman, covers the Eagles, and he talks about what went wrong. And I want to read a few excerpts to you about what happened that led to this. So obviously injuries hurt the Eagles, like to Lane Johnson and whatnot. But I mean, I want to read this part to you. With the offense stagnant, head coach Nick Sirianni took on a more active role over the latter part of the season. He and then OC Kevin Patullo began incorporating different run designs in an effort to kickstart the operation. And now, mind you, Stoutland has been run game coordinator for like 7 years. Stoutland was not consulted about the changes to what he felt was an appropriate degree. A leak source said, to the point where he no longer desired the title of run game coordinator because he felt it no longer fit his job description. The experience gave him pause about continuing on with the organization. Another wrinkle emerged with the hiring of 33-year-old Mannion, their new OC, last week. Manuel installed a new scheme that will pull from the Shanahan-McVay systems, and given that Stoutland doesn't have a history with that offense, he would have needed someone to bring him up to speed on the new system, a source noted. His agent last week had indicated that Stoutland was frustrated with how the season transpired, with his voice not being heard within the organization, and said there was a chance he could move on. However, Herman had emphasized Stoutland was not planning to retire from football. That is the most important line there. So this relationship has been souring, whether it's Sirianni, whether it's Howie Roseman, whatever it is, that culture is rotten over there right now. You hate to see it. And Stoutland wanted out, but it doesn't sound to me like he wants to just hang around the organization
Yeah.
like the Eagles are putting out. Like he just doesn't want to coach. He just wants to be like an ambassador, like he's Eli Manning at like charity events. No, he wants to get in the game and coach. And I don't buy for a second that he's going to be comfortable with I'll just hang around the building and let somebody else do my job when I could go somewhere else. I firmly believe he wants to coach. I think he wants to coach this year. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. His own tweet kind of implied that his time in Philly was up, period, not like up as just a coach. Stout out. And, I think that there's a lot of smoke here. And I just get the feeling the Eagles organization is trying to put out flames that they started, and they don't know how to get ahead of this. And they're trying to delay and sort things out. But in the end, they're replacing him with another O-line coach, and they're letting Sirianni and his new OC do that. If he is being replaced at O-line coach with a new person, even under contract, he's going to say to them, let me go. I want to go work somewhere else. And there's really not a damn thing they can do about it at that point. So I don't think this story is done. I think he will shake loose as long as he wants to coach. And I think he does want to coach. Once he shakes loose, as you said to me on the phone call we had earlier, there is zero excuse for the Giants not to put pedal to the metal and go full throttle to get this guy here. Yep. No excuse.
The second they approve an interview, the Eagles can't do shit. It's over. Like, they can't stop us.
Right. And I think that's exactly what the Eagles are petrified of, because they know exactly where he may land. They know that not only will their program start to fall apart, but that he may take all of his ability, go right to the division rivals up the road, right to the Giants close to his home, right as they're getting John Harbaugh with their young quarterback and putting things in order. It is a horrible, horrible situation for the Eagles. But they created it. They did this. So I don't think they can actually stop it. I suspect we're going to hear in the next day or two. That's my guess. I don't have no sources on this, but I suspect in the next day or two, the way this is going to play out is right now it's, he'll stay. The plan is for him to stay with the organization. Within a day or two, you're going to hear the Eagles and Jeff Stoutland have mutually agreed to part ways, and he will be seeking out opportunities outside the organization. And that's it. I think that's going to come out in the next day or two.
I think, and one thing you brought up when we were talking on the phone earlier is like, do the Eagles try to like, all right, we're going to let you on your contract if, handshake agreement, you don't go to the Giants or something like that. And I don't know. I feel like if I'm Jeff Stoutland, I'm not even saying this as a Giants fan. If I'm Jeff Stoutland, you'd be like, why am I going to agree where I potentially have to be thousands of miles away from my kids because you are insecure about me going to?
Not just that. Why would your agent let you? If you're a free agent and you're trying to get money, right? You're trying to get a good deal. Why would you automatically say no to the team that just hired like the most expensive head coach or whatever, or one of the most expensive head coaches, and is trying to spend money to build a staff? Why would you take them out of your bidding? It's illogical. Your agent would not even let you do it. That's not happening. So this came down to, in my mind, this is Eagles. Either you keep Stoutland as your O-line coach and run game coordinator, and he keeps going, or you lose him. I don't think there's an in between here. I think they're losing him.
Yep. And if that happens, I think the Giants should play the waiting game here and try to get Stoutland, because I know you got burned with Monken, but I think the reward outweighs the risk by 1,000. Like it is so much more worth it if you can keep him. Let's see. Authentic said that reported that Stoutland will be back in a different role. Is that the report?
That was the original report a few hours ago.
Gotcha.
And I want to read the Garafolo. Like, I think it's important that we read the Mike Garafolo quote on this, because I think the media, the way they write these things actually does matter. And how do I share this stupid thing? I'm media literate. I'm Twitter literate.
I can put it up. Give me a second.
It's the one where he wrote the plan. It's for 3 hours.
I know what you're talking about.
All right, so let's pull it up and let's dissect, because I think Garafolo is probably the best here to go through this stuff. He's very well connected in the Giants Philly circle.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, where was it? All right, I see it. Share it.
All right. So let's read this. The plan is for Jeff Stoutland to have, quote, some sort of involvement with the Eagles organization, but he will absolutely have other teams checking in with him immediately. They've smelled blood in the water for quite some time and are interested in him. This, to me, reads very much like the Eagles putting out, we're planning on keeping him around. That's our plan. And there's not much they can do if he wants to go elsewhere. I think that's what this league's like. I mean, what does that mean? Some sort of role in the organization. They have no defined role. Why would you accept it if you're Jeff Stoutland? Is my question. Right? And so I think I just feel like I mean, I guess it could happen, but I feel like this is headed towards a full divorce. And so we'll see.
We'll see.
You know, I don't buy for a second that they're going to be able to hold him back if he really wants to go coach elsewhere while they're replacing him as coach on the Eagles staff. That I don't buy, you know, and it's going to be a real problem with his agents. And he's a legend in the industry. I don't think they're going to be able to do any of that stuff. So
that's the thing too, is like, if he wants to leave, are you really going to hold hostage a guy who helped you win 2 Super Bowls, who's beloved by players, like, and former players and all that?
I don't think so. We should get into some of his X's and O's, though, right? Like some of how he coached. Why is he so good, right? Yeah. So let's start with, he's an outstanding judge of talent. So we're going to go back several years to the 2011 draft. I think you know who I'm going to talk about now. There was a specific player in the 2011 draft who was an undersized offensive lineman, under 300 pounds, from the University of Cincinnati. Played center. Nobody wanted him. In those days, remember, you had to be a big, giant monster to play O-line. But he was a great athlete. One guy in that building pounded the table for the Eagles to take him. And a lot of people said, don't waste a draft pick on him. And that was Jeff Stoutland. And the player that he pounded the table for was Jason Kelce. Do you know where they drafted Jason Kelce?
7th round, I think.
They drafted Jason Kelce in the 6th round, pick 191 overall.
I do think that wasn't that a couple years before Stoutland got there.
I think he was part of the organization.
I think Stoutland came in with Chip Kelly.
Yeah, but this is during the Chip Kelly years, is it not?
I thought Chip Kelly was 2013.
I thought he was the one who was. I thought he was part of the organization. Maybe I'm wrong.
I know you. Maybe you're thinking Malata, because I know he was big in the Malata thing. And he did develop Jason Kelce.
Yeah. Well, then forget that. But Kelce became who he is today, right? I think arguably the best center in the history of the game.
Correct.
Under him as a 6th round pick.
I mean, he made his first Pro Bowl 2014. He made his first All-Pro 2017. That was all after he got with Stoutland University.
Yeah. Jordan Mailata, 7th round pick, right?
This one, I've heard lots of stories. Actually, it was with Brandon Brown. Brandon Brown found him, took him to Stoutland, and Stoutland was in love.
7th, I mean, yeah, I mean, it was 7th round pick, all pro left tackle. Landon Dickerson, he was a 2nd round pick, 37th overall, all pro left guard. Cam Jurgens, 2nd round pick, right? He was picked 51 overall. I think it was one pick after, or a few picks after Wan'Dale, right?
Isaac Seumalo.
Right. He's been a Pro Bowler. Isaac Seumalo was a 3rd round pick, if I recall. Right. 3rd round pick, 79th overall. Made the Pro Bowl when he got to the Steelers, when he got more of a chance to play, but he played that year that the Eagles won. He was their left guard, their right guard. They're starting right guard when they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Chiefs. Developed under Stoutland. The only really high pick he's had is Lane Johnson, right? I mean, he was 4th overall, but Lane Johnson is arguably the best, if not the best, one of the best right tackles in the history of the NFL. And this guy just takes talent and takes it to another level. His blocking scheme. He's an interesting coach. He teaches something called the flipper technique, where he teaches, instead of just punching guys with your hand, to use your entire upper extremity. like use your arm, your shoulder to knock guys off balance. It is not a hold. They don't latch on with it. They just, it's essentially like a full arm punch. And he teaches that teaches his guys to do it correctly to get some power and separation on defenders without holding. He coaches a hybrid of zone and gap scheme. Kind of teaches everything.
A lot of duo.
Tons of duo. Just a lot of footwork stuff, right? He likes athletes. He teaches them how to use their footwork and athleticism. A lot of climbing to the next level. He wants big guys. He wants athletes, but he has a very versatile blocking scheme. But everybody that he coaches gets better under him. Remember Mekhi Becton, cast off from the Jets, goes to the Eagles 1 year there at their right guard, plays great, gets a $10 million contract the next year with the Chargers. So he just makes everybody better. And I mean, I think he's arguably, not even arguably, I think he's easily the most valuable position coach in the NFL, right? If you'd emptied out every NFL position coach, is there anybody more valuable than Jeff Stoutland on the market?
No, not a single one. And like I said, I truly think it's like pound for pound as a coach, like at what they do, Jeff Stoutland's easily top 10 in the NFL.
Yeah. So let's see if he shakes loose. I mean, I think he's gonna be the guy that everybody wants. I have no doubt in my mind that he's already talking to every team tonight. You know, his agent is obviously talking to, I'm sure, the Giants. I'm sure plenty of teams. He's going to have a Harbaugh-like effect, right? Where even teams that have O-line coaches, even good ones, are probably calling and saying, "Are you available?" You know, are you available? Like, you'd be surprised. I think some of the teams that we're hearing that might be calling him. You know, and so I think a lot of teams are calling and trying to find out, "Are you available? Would you like to come here?" I just don't buy the narrative that is being spun tonight that he's just hanging around the building in some capacity. I don't buy that for a second.
We'll see. It's possible, but I agree with you. I'm not.
That's like a soft retirement. He doesn't sound like a guy who wants to retire, right? So we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's going to shake out that way.
Maybe he just has a lot of respect for the city of Philadelphia. They're gonna wait it out till his contract goes. I don't know, but I'm not sure.
But why would he?
Yeah,
I mean, it's been acrimonious with Sirianni. It's been acrimonious with Patullo, who didn't even get fired. He just got reassigned. He's still there.
Yeah.
And now the new guy, the young OC, comes in and wants his own O-line coach. And apparently, do you remember the stories a few weeks ago? Like, oh, we can't hire an OC because they don't want to have Jeff Stoutland forced on them, or whatever bullshit story that was being spun out there.
Well, I'm sure it's probably the same thing that was with coaches and Jim Schwartz, where it wasn't that they didn't want Jim Schwartz. It was like, does this guy want to be here? Like, I think that was probably what was going on.
Right. So again, we'll have to see with the Stoutland thing, but I think right away, I imagine that. Did I lose you?
No.
Okay. I imagine that John Harbaugh has been probably preparing for this moment for a while now. I mean, if Connor Hughes is tweeting it out a few weeks ago, you know, and hinting at it, the NFL guys have known this was a possibility.
Yeah,
and they've been prepared
for this. Trending this way for a while, like
right. So I have no doubt in my mind that John Harbaugh and all his Philly connections is on the phone with Nagy and his Philly connections, and they're talking to Stoutland and his agent and saying, "What's it going to take to get you over here? We need you here in New York," and we'll see.
And I mean, let's see, two things I want to say. One, before we totally move off of like who Stoutland is and more of his philosophy. One thing I'll say that's also be big to get him is of how good he is with as far as like a run game coordinator with incorporating the quarterback and what he's done with Jalen Hurts over there. And I think that would be a great fit with Jackson Dart. And I will say, if we do get Jeff Stoutland, this is the only situation that this next statement is true. You guys are a bunch of cowards for trying to ban the tush push because you just can't stop it. That's why you want it banned. Only if we get Jeff Stoutland. Okay. But
the tush push. But we don't need the tush push. We have Cam Scannable.
But the other thing I was going to say was, I feel like I forgot it. Go ahead. I'll try to think what I was trying to think.
No, I got nothing else on Stoutland. The only thing I'll say is you can't hire anybody else right now until you sort this issue out. It is okay to miss on guys right now. to ensure that you have turned over every stone in pursuit of Jeff Stoutland. It's okay if it takes a few extra days. I know it's going to give people a little bit of Monken PTSD, but when you come across a guy like this, it's worth waiting for and finding out. I also don't think if he's going to coach anywhere this year, I don't think he's waiting weeks and weeks. I'm pretty sure he's been thinking about this for a long time and probably knows where he wants to go. And the second that team calls him, it's just going to be a matter of like, how do I get there and how much are you paying me? And I think that's it. So I think this will move pretty fast. So if we find out that he is actually going to shake loose, which I think we'll know soon. If we do find out that he might shake loose, I think that he'll be on another team by early next week. Is my guess. Right after the Super Bowl, probably.
We'll see if the Eagles just try making it difficult and what happens. But I agree with you. Like, look, Juan Castillo is probably the guy you're going to hire. If not, he has a job. Like, it's not like he's getting hired somewhere else. He's the O-line coach at Syracuse. So, don't tell him not to quit his job. And we'll talk to you later. The one thing I remember I was going to say, the one thing is worth mentioning because we've talked about Jeff Stoutland, how great he is, how great he would be for the Giants. The one other thing worth mentioning, regardless as if this does not work out in the Giants' favor, is this is a huge thing for everybody in the NFC East because the Eagles get much, much, much worse as a football team losing Jeff Stoutland.
Yeah, he's the most important part of their team. He really is and has been for a long time in terms of coaches. So this is a big hit. And they're kind of it's weird to say this, but they're kind of a dumpster fire for a team that just won the Super Bowl. A lot of problems. Whatever. Their problems. I'll take Jeff Stoutland if we can get him. Are you okay with losing out on Castillo? Like if you got to wait and you end up not getting Stoutland, but Castillo takes another job, are you fine with that?
Yeah, I don't give a shit. We already lost Brasillo. If you ask me, am I worth losing on Brasillo as a guy I really like, or Ledford? Like, yeah, sure. I'd be like, I don't know if I want to risk that for the unknown if Stoutland's going to shake loose. But as far as like Castillo, who I like, he's good, 66, man. Like if we lose out on him, we lose out on him.
You just call Kurt Anderson, right?
Yeah.
So you just call him. Call their other guys here. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how the media story shakes out. I don't buy it. I don't think I don't think you write Stout out if you're just planning to just kind of chill on the sideline. But I will see. I think the Garofalo line in there about like how teams have been waiting for this and they're going to be calling him. Why are you throwing that in there unless you know that he's taking the call? So
Connor Hughes alluded to it. I think a lot of people expect to at least try to change his mind. So we'll see what happens. I don't think it's set in stone at the very least.
Trying to change his mind, meaning if he says okay, I don't think the Eagles are going to be able to stop him.
Yes, correct. His mind right. About staying and not coaching, and we'll see what happens. See how much money a team is willing to throw at him, and if he likes the fit and all that. All right. A couple other things I wanted to talk about with you before we get off here is one, I wanted to talk about the big front office hire we did.
Big thing today.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, I have right after is, let's talk a little bit about how Nagy, because we finally have our other coordinator, how that kind of might change our approach this offseason as far as the players we'll look for.
Yeah. So let's talk about the exec we hired. So it was reported last week that Giants were going to hire a new exec after Kevin Abrams was fired, who would report directly to John Harbaugh. I'm assuming that's who this person is, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chris Rossetti. He's the one who went and got her. Fan of the show, Chris Rossetti.
Chris Rossetti.
Yeah. So the Giants hired Dawn Aponte today to be exactly in that role, senior vice president of player personnel. So she is interesting. She is a rising star of an executive in the NFL. Quite a career. She spent 7 years starting with the Jets from 94 to 2001 as an accountant, and then became a senior cap analyst with the Jets 2001 to 2003, and got in pro personnel as an assistant. In 2003 to 2005, she was the Jets manager of football administration. 2005, she was senior director of football administration. So we're going back to the Jets 94. It was like that's like Rich Kotite, all the way up to like Bill Parcells and Rex Ryan, right? I think that's where that's where we are now. She went from the Jets in 2005 to the NFL Central Office in 2006 as VP of Labor Finance. So she was involved in a lot of labor finance contract negotiations. Then she spent 2 years there, and from 2009 to 2010, she went to the Browns as the VP of Football Administration, worked her way up, went to the Dolphins, and was in the Dolphins organization for about 6-7 years, from 2010 to 2016. First senior VP of Football Operations, which is what she is here now, and Executive Vice President of Football Administration. And this is where she had overlap with Joe Schoen. 2017, 2006 to now, 10 years, almost 10 years, about 9 years. She has had a role back with the NFL as Chief Administrator of Football Operations, and now she's Senior VP of Football Operations for the Giants. So she has kind of climbed the ladder from the administrative executive side. She's viewed as a potential future general manager. And I believe she's the one who's reporting directly to John Harbaugh. And it would get, based on her history, she seems like the senior contract negotiator and cap manager for the team. So big hire here. Do you have any thoughts on her other than her impressive resume?
I mean, one thing I think is interesting with the Giants connection, because always brought up, you mentioned the name, is Bill Parcells. Is, that's where she kind of started, and then seemingly, I mean, I don't know exactly what the timeline is, because that was the year that he left, but she might have crossed paths again there in Miami. So it seems like probably somebody that Bill Parcells is a big fan of. Yeah, she's. I think people need to look past like the names that it was with the Jets, Browns, and Dolphins. I get it that those are not successful organizations, but she's in charge of the cap. Like she has a ton of respect as a cap guru. Like I said, she's gotten GM interviews from that, which is not easy to do for somebody who's a cap person. That's not as popular as the scouting people. She's seen as a trailblazer in the NFL front office or the NFL offices. So it seems like phenomenal hires from Staten Island. She's I think the natural fit. She has a relationship with Joe Schoen. So I imagine Joe Schoen helped make this suggestion. But as you mentioned, it sounds like she's going to be reporting directly to John Harbaugh. So
I don't know Joe Schoen. I don't know if Joe Schoen made the suggestion, because this is not a role that reports to him at all.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure he has discussions. Was part of discussions about bringing candidates.
I mean, she's the kind of candidate that will either be a GM from like the executive administrative side, not necessarily the player personnel side directly. Although that's been her experience for years, or she's just going to be like the president of football operations type person. That's where she's headed. And I think it's a great story. It sounds like she's a very qualified candidate. So I'm excited to have her here. It's just something different than Kevin Abrams. And look, if she does happen to get a job as a GM or a president of football operations somewhere else after her time with the Giants, guess what? We get 2 third-round picks.
Sure.
Because she would qualify for the compensatory formula. So rooting for her to get that job, at some point. But I think it's good. It's good to have somebody like her in the organization.
Yeah. I mean, it's big with the change of the structure of this front office that we have, a VP of football operations reporting directly to John Harbaugh, and, getting rid of long tenured people like Kevin Abrams and bringing in young, bright minds to try to work our cap formula. Maybe, we could start playing some of those cap games we haven't played in the past. So, it's exciting. It's these types of moves are why you brought in John Harbaugh.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So you want to talk about what kind of players, what does it mean for our players and our approach to free agency in the draft to have a guy like Nagy in? So what we know about Nagy, you mentioned, right? We talked about the X's and O's of how he operates an offense. I imagine there'll be some input from Harbaugh and a run game coordinator on how they run the run game and the O-line specifically, which will not be something that I think will mirror what Nagy did before. But from, one of the hallmarks of the receiving room is that they just use a lot of different guys, right? And this is an Andy Reid thing, where it's not like one feature wide receiver. It is several people who are able to play multiple roles, whether it's wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. But the receiving game is, receiver by committee. And so I think that's something to keep in mind. Now, you don't play just receiver by committee when you have a guy like Malik Nabers. He's a number 1 wide receiver. But how do you see the Giants supplementing the wide receiver room, or let's just say the receiver room in general, whether it's wide receiver, tight end? How do you think they'll approach those positions to get targets for Jackson Dart with Nagy as OC?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. It's a lot of horizontal passing concepts, and I think they're going to manufacture touches to guys like Malik Nabers, guys like Wan'Dale Robinson. When teams play soft, the Chiefs are very quick to just get that ball to that guy, get it in the hands of their playmakers, and have them take off. So Travis Kelce, if you get an athletic tight end in here, maybe they see Theo Johnson as role C. Maybe they add somebody, but they'll manufacture touches to guys like that and get them in space and get them the ball. That's all about it. Just getting guys who can make plays after the catch, get the ball in their hands and get them in the space. That's a lot of what they do, and I think that's what you should keep an eye on for. I think Wan'Dale Robinson fits his offense perfectly. I think he's gonna be more of a priority. I remember talking to you like it was a year or two ago, or I think it was like last offseason. We're talking like if we don't bring back Wan'Dale Robinson, we weren't even really thinking about we were gonna bring him back too much. Like where would he go and would be a good fit? I remember you mentioned the Chiefs and how you could see him being like a 1,000-yard receiver, 100 catch guy in the Chiefs, and we ended up getting that here. But I remember that conversation, and here it is. That offense is coming to New York, so. I think that is something to keep an eye on for this offseason. And, I think adding an athletic tight end is something I'd keep an eye on. A guy that you and I are both very high on, and Eli Stowers, I think he would be a phenomenal fit in a Matt Nagy offense. I think athletic offensive lineman is something to keep an eye on with how heavy they are in zone schemes. Marcus Bowe would be a very good fit for this type of offense.
Maybe not. He loves athletes and he loves guys who can get to the next level. Bo's a little undersized compared to the guys he's had in the past. Like he's valued size in the tackle positions. I don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah, but like we'll see. But I agree. I mean, I think I think what you're talking about in general is correct. I think Stowers is an interesting name, right? I mean, you and I both loved him. We thought honestly on tape he probably was the best tight end in the class that we viewed. He didn't. I don't think he graded out exactly that way, but he was close. And I think our view on this was Kenyon Sadiq is an athletic freak, but just the tape doesn't. Personally, I don't feel that like the tape matches the level of hype he's getting. Overall, I think he's a very good player and has a huge upside. But Stowers is the guy that I think if you're looking for a receiving tight end who can be a weapon, that's the guy who's very impressive, especially with his speed. Michael Trigg's another guy we loved, played with Jackson Dart,
good
Baylor,
athlete.
Very good athlete. I mean, I think those are the two we were most excited about in reviewing.
But I'll say about Stowers, Trigg's a great athlete. Don't get me wrong. Stowers, we talked about, is legitimately one of the best athletes I've seen on tape.
I mean, reportedly runs in the 4.3s.
Yeah, in high school.
In high school, so we don't know what he runs now, but his tape looks like he runs in the 4.3s. Like he is.
Granted, his dad was timing it, so maybe not, but still, high school.
Fat. He's fat. Like on the field,
he's very run that fast in high school. Like
he's a weapon as a wide receiver, and I love Trigg. I think you and I were kind of the same on like Trigg and Towers. You were a little higher on Stowers. I love Trigg, and I think he's a little more physical than Stowers, but still an elite athlete and just a weapon in the pass game. And I think these are guys I'd rather have. So they're interesting, like how these are the kind of guys I can see the Giants going after, right? To supplement the pass game. It doesn't have to be a receiver. Like I can see a world where you just say, you know what? We have Slayton under contract. We have Malik Nabers, obviously. You pay Wan'Dale Robinson, and now you don't have, you don't need to draft a wide receiver early. You need a receiving target, and maybe the better value is in a tight end, and I think that I can see that happening.
I'll tell you, like you brought up Eli Stowers in the chat tonight. I went back and I was just watching them highlights of him to kind of like catch myself up and kind of remember who he was. And man, like, do you remember how much Vanderbilt just like basically handed him the ball? They just
every play. It was like
touch passes.
One of the slowest all 22s you have to watch because he's in every fucking play. Getting the ball, like it's just. He was their best player, other than Diego Pavia, right? I guess, but he was his favorite target,
and that just made me think of Kelce because that's what they do with Kelce. Like he's their best player, and they just got the ball in his hands any way they could.
Yeah, no, I think he's a great player, and I think you're right. He's going to rise a lot more. He's going to probably rise above comfort level in the draft if he tests as well as we can.
Take him with our second round pick.
Yeah, he'll probably be in that territory. Are you going to want to take a tight end? That I don't know. Like it's a good tight end class. Are you going to do it? But that's the kind of decision I think. Like getting back to what we're discussing, like how does this fit with Nagy? I think they're going to want versatile passing targets. Scadaboo and Tracy are good receiving running backs. They actually fit the system pretty well. I think you're going to want tight ends you can trust to be better receivers who can actually specifically do more with the ball in their hand, more yak, better route running, more speed, so to complement what you get from Theo Johnson, whatever it is you get from Theo Johnson, so I think they're going to look for guys like that, whether it's in free agency or the draft.
Is a comp I made for Cam Scadaboo, and it wasn't really like a play style comp, but it was more just like an athleticism to what they're able to do for you as a football player, was Kareem Hunt, because Kareem Hunt was a little slower guy. He was great at breaking tackles, broke tackles in different ways than Cam Scadaboo, but great at breaking tackles, like great receiver. And that was a guy who had a ton of success his rookie year underneath Matt Nagy.
Yeah. So from the targets, like the receiving targets and weapons, I think we have a couple of running backs who, believe it or not, actually fit Nagy pretty well. They'll probably add to that room, and I think they're probably going to cut Devin Singletary and bring in another veteran, is my guess. I don't think this running back class is so amazing that you're going to. I personally am not thrilled about having to use a draft pick on a running back in this class. I'm okay with seeing where the UDFAs go, to be totally frank, depending on how the board shakes out. But I think the veterans that are out there this year are actually pretty good. There's some really good veteran running backs that might help complement this room. But like I said, I think a tight end might help. We'll see. I think the key here, though, is you got to try to bring back Wan'Dale Robinson, to make, because I think he fits even better in this offense now than he would have before. So I hope they do bring him back. We'll see what his value is on the market. From the O-line and the trenches, I don't think you're going to run this offense with the same kind of personnel, especially in the center of the O-line. You're going to need athletic, like you said, like more athletic linemen. And you're going to need some power at the guard position. You really, you need a much more stout interior O-line. So, I mean, the big name out there obviously is Tyler Linderbaum, right? I don't know if we're going to get him, but he's the big one. He's the big fish to try to get.
He's got a little bit of my comp for him coming out, because I love Tyler Linderbaum. I saw a little bit of Jason Kelsey with him, to like his athleticism at the center position.
Yeah. I mean, Linderbaum, I've come around on him. I've been wary of paying him that big money. But at the end of the day, he's elite at something. He's an elite run blocker. He's a good enough pass blocker. He's young. I think, it's a guy you can invest in.
Elite young players hit free agency. I'm okay overpaying there. And, it's only going to happen most of the time at the less. I know it's not a position of like the premium position, but those premium position elite young players don't just hit free agency.
Yeah. I think actually this is one situation where not having War Machine is going to hurt us, because I think he really did mesh well with War Machine at O-line coach. And they're going to want him in Cleveland. They need a center. I think they'll try to pay him. I don't think they have a ton of cap space, but they'll try to pay him over there and bring him. Munkin and Warhop will try to bring him there. And obviously the Chargers have a ton of money. They need a center. I think they're going to make a big push for him. We'll see. I think we're going to need real beef in the middle of the line. We cannot have soft interior line play if we're going to run this, a good offense here. And I don't think with Harbaugh, I don't even think that's possible. Right. I can't remember Harbaugh having a line full of soft interior O-line guys. Sometimes they're not perfect. They have their flaws, but it's usually big, strong dudes who are pushing the line back, at least in the run game. And I think that's what you would expect. So those are the kind of things I expect to see from Nagy and Harbaugh building this out. I think there's a good chance that if we don't get Stoutland, that I think that Greg Roman is on the staff. I believe that he'll probably be a run game coordinator for this team, and you can learn what you want from that. But I think you're looking at a tougher, bigger, stronger interior line.
So I think another thing just to, keep in mind outside of just trying to find, especially in this draft, trying to find the fits for the scheme, but also Matt Nagy was a head coach and he was a part of some drafts. And I think it will be interesting to look at some of the guys the Bears drafted that are going to be free agents. I took a quick look. I didn't do a deep dive, but a couple names that popped off the page to me were, Tevin Jenkins could be a nice shot as like as a guard. Yeah, I don't think he'll be that expensive. probably a 1-year deal. I think he signed like 1 year, $9 million with the Bears and Browns. He didn't even really play. Might even less than that, to be honest. I can't remember, but he didn't even really play for them. So I don't imagine he's going to bring in much more than that. So, bring in a guy like that, take a shot. We'll see. Another guy who caught my eye was, Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert is going to be a free agent. That just could be your third running back type of thing. It's not like a great ad, but that's somebody who was a part of the Bears. And I think it's, it's something to keep an eye on. Cole Kmet is somebody who people have talked about, a potential cut candidate. It's a guy to keep an eye on. So we'll see, but that's just another thing to look at.
And I think the Bears, just talking about the Bears, even though this is not the Nagy Bears, proved last offseason you could turn over the interior O-line in one offseason very quickly. Because if you remember, the Bears had a weak interior O-line, and that really hurt Caleb Williams in his first year. Ben Johnson comes in and it's like, no, I can't run my offense with this shit. So do you remember what they did? They signed Drew Dahlman, the center out of Atlanta, for 3 years, $42 million, solid deal, very good player. They trade a upcoming 2026, so not even last year's 4th round pick for Joe Thuney, the all-pro guard from the Chiefs. And then they trade I think they traded a 6th round pick from last year's class, or a 5th round pick from last year's class for Jonah Jackson and so they basically gave up a future 4th, and what do they give here? And a 6th in 2025. So a future 4th and a current 6th to get their 2 interior starting guards, and good guards. And I mean, just that and Dahlman, all of a sudden their whole O-line is remade. And now Ben Johnson's able to run his offense. I'd like to see that kind of creativity this offseason, right? We have the same issues. We need to rework that interior O-line quite a bit. I'm actually okay with letting Marcus Bowe compete for the starting right tackle job. Even if you just bring in another strong tackle to like compete with him, it doesn't have to be Illuminor if he's priced out. But I think you cannot miss on the interior. I think you almost need 3 new guys for the interior.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Look, I don't think you can go into next year handing Marcus Bowe the job. I think that's a mistake. We were all excited about Marcus Bowe, but he's a 5th round pick and he had a lot of issues in pass protection. I hope with him potentially improving his strength this offseason, I have a lot of belief in him. But you got to bring in, you should have a swing tackle anyway. So you got to bring in a guy to compete with him for that spot. Again,
Hudson's got to get out of here.
Yeah, not Hudson, but bring in somebody who can be, an okay right tackle and be your swing guy.
Yeah. Well, I think these are the kind of things we're looking for in the offseason right away, even before you get to free agency. And I think teams have proven you can rebuild an O-line with guys who are maybe not achieving their highest level of success, veterans on other teams who need a chance. If you've got a good O-line coach and you've got a good eye for talent, you can get these guys or just solid veterans who are aging out a little bit, and you can rebuild your O-line pretty quickly. I'm hoping to see that on the interior. I think that's going to benefit Jackson Dart a lot, especially with his play style, right? You see the way he manipulates pocket pressure. He's so good at sensing it and moving around in the pocket, and he likes to step into the pocket, right? That's just his instinct, is to step. He doesn't run backwards and to the side. He steps in, and you want to give him that strong interior support so he has room to work. I think that's going to be, honestly, other than trying to get some of your own free agents like Wan'Dale, possibly Flotz on, I think that interior O-line work is the most important thing they're going to have to get to work on right away.
Yeah. I think they're going to hold on to John Runyon. But I would cut him. I don't think he's worth the $9 million that you're paying him. He hasn't lived up to it, and I think I'd move on, but we'll see.
It's a good question from Frank. Do you guys like Maui Noah at right tackle, or is he a guard? I can tell you right now, Monty has loved him at right tackle since we watched him months ago. The question is, will he stick at tackle? He supposedly has suboptimal arm length. I can say honestly that I don't see it on film ever translating to a problem, but then again, it is college, so you kind of don't know sometimes. We have to see what his arm length is when we get to the combine, but he is a monster. The guy's a mauler at minimum. If you slide him into guard, I think you're getting essentially a guy with the upside of an all-pro guard. And at tackle, I think he's actually a very good starting tackle in the NFL. So I think so, but I would have no problem taking Maui Noa at 5 overall if that's who they wanted. I wouldn't be upset by just building up the O-line. I don't think that's where they go, but it wouldn't upset me one bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely think Malago is a tackle. I agree he could be a great guard and you could put him there. But I think he could do it. And who was it? Those D-Kit and I were talking about comps for Maui Noah, and D-Kit mentioned one that I really liked. It was Darnell Wright. He mentioned. I thought that was a pretty solid comp.
And Darnell Wright went 10th overall as Bears starting right tackle. He's one of the better starting right tackles in the NFL now.
Yep.
So yeah. I mean, I think that's probably a good comp. He's a good player.
Yeah.
So I'll give you guys a name to think about, and if you haven't heard of him yet, you should learn him. And this is directly related to our new assistant O-line coach from Michigan. And Don, shout out Don. I don't know if he's in the chat or not, but Don brought him up, and I think it's a good name. Ray knows about him too. He is a guard coming into the draft from Michigan, Giovanni El-Hadi. Take a look at his tape. You're going to like him. He's a good, solid guard. He's probably like a day 3 type guard, but he's the kind of guy like I think will be a good player for the Giants. He's coached by our current O-line coach. I mean, our assistant O-line coach, and I think he has ties to Michigan. Which get used to Michigan, by the way.
Yeah,
the Harbaughs use Michigan like a minor league team to find coaches and players. So that's a name to look at on day 3. Okay, it's just if you guys haven't watched him yet, Giovanni El-Hadi. And I think he's actually going to be a solid contributor at the NFL level. I don't know if he's a starter, but he's a good player. So take a look at him.
Yeah, we'll have to get back into doing some reviews, at least a couple players each episode, and that's definitely somebody we should look at.
When we get to our day 3 guys, I think we're going to be talking about El-Hadi and guys like that we're targeting. I would imagine that's probably where he's going, but we'll see. I think, but like you have to start connecting the dots a little bit with the coaches you hire and the type of players they'd be looking for, not just stylistically, but specifically the guys who are tied to college programs. I mean, I think that's a direct link.
Michigan's a team we absolutely have to look at, and they don't have a ton of NFL guys, so they have some.
Especially if we hire Castillo as our O-line coach, because then you have 2 guys who are on that Michigan O-line. They're going to want at least one guy who's been there with them, right? They're going to want it's a culture guy, right? You want somebody who understands their system. Yeah. So just remember that name, Giovanni El-Hadi. What other information do you want to go over? Anything else before we shut this down for the day?
No, I don't think so. I mean, again, it's gonna be good. We're gonna have to get into our free agency breakdown at some point, and we'll definitely have to talk about all these connections where our coaches come from. Talk about Matt Nagy and what guys fit his scheme more, what guys fit Denard Wilson's scheme more. So yeah, fun episode. That's all I got though.
I'm not going to shut it down yet because this is crazy. But first of all, thank you guys for being here. And if you haven't done it yet, please hit the like button. It helps us grow. And hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed. It helps us grow on YouTube. And for those, you guys probably can't see this number unless you're on Twitter. But I think between YouTube and Twitter, this is an insane number. We are approaching 2,000 viewers, which is a big number for us. I think we had like about 1,400 last week, which was a big number. But we appreciate you guys because you make it possible. You help us grow. And thank you guys for reposting and being here. So appreciate everything. We are going to have to get into the free agency stuff. I think we should start digging into our own free agents and free agents to get into in the coming weeks. And honestly, I think we should we're going to need help from our friend Chris Rossetti, our pro personnel guy, because I really feel like some of the best teams find gems from other teams that, guys who are on the outs, either who they're going to be cut or you can trade for them because they're going to be potential cap casualties and get them for like a cheap round pick. We need to start scouring for those kinds of players to see how they fit. And it'll be easier to see who it is once we know who our O-line coach is. But now with Nagy in the mix and Denard Wilson in the mix, I think we get a better idea for what we're looking for.
Or your own team, as Matt pointed out. Hey, you get Stoutland. We'll do it all over again, just like Mekhi Becton. Transformer Evan Neal.
If Jeff Stoutland keeps Evan Neal here and turns him into something that looks like a functional NFL offensive lineman, he should have a statue built for him outside of MetLife Stadium. And when Evan Neal's career is over, we should just engrave him in bronze and stick him inside that statue because it would be that impossible, I think, to turn Evan Neal into an offensive lineman. Yeah. But yes, big shout out to Stoutland. Exactly. Big shout out to everybody who's been here. We're at 1970. I want to keep it going until we hit 2000.
All right, let's do it.
Just keep talking. What other topic do you want to go over to hit 2000?
Let's see. All right, what about quarterback coach? We got big news.
T. Martin.
Martin.
T. Martin, is he officially part of our staff yet or no?
No, but he officially was let go by Baltimore, and that's what everybody's connecting right now.
So shout out Rad. I think Rad was in the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still there. Our buddy Rad, who's a USC guy, a football coach out in Cali. T. Martin is really a guy that got a ton of credit working with Lamar Jackson the last few years. 2023 to now, he's been their QB coach under Monken. Before that, he was the wide receiver coach at 21 and 22. So he preceded Monken. He was there. Before that, he was the assistant head coach and wide receivers coach at Tennessee in 19 and 20. And he was the OC and wide receivers coach for 3 years at USC from 16 to 18. He was at USC for a long time, from 2012 to 2018. He had various roles: wide receiver coach, pass game coordinator, and then up to OC. Worked his way up through the college ranks. Yep, he was Sam Darnold's OC. Good OC, good play caller, bright young mind in the game. Really, I mean, he was a quarterback in college. You know, he was like the hefty righty. You know, big dude. Tennessee. Well, yeah, Tennessee, right? Yeah. But he played, I think, briefly for the Steelers, and then he bounced around. But really good quality coach. I think he's a future NFL offensive coordinator and potentially even a head coach. You know, he's young enough to do that. He's still only 47. But absolutely, I think that's a guy that I would love to have here because he did a lot of work with Lamar Jackson as he evolved into the elite passer that he became after already being an elite playmaker. I think he would do wonders with Jackson Dart as his QB coach. So I'm hoping we land him. I know Monken's going to try to get him in Cleveland, but I hope we're able to bring him here. We already have Willie Taggart in some sort of role. I don't know if his exact role is defined yet. But you know, those are guys who are filling out the staff. And I think that they're going to be a big plus for Jackson Dart in this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was a great grab. I mean, just John Harbaugh being creative like he does. And T. Martin was, you know, an up and coming college coach, and he grabbed him as a wide receiver coach and worked his way back up to quarterback coach. And now, you know, I know a lot of people in Baltimore saw him as a very valuable coach.
Yep. It's going to be fun putting this together. So hopefully when we come back next week, we will have a complete coaching staff and we can really dig into what this is going to potentially look like. And which players we're going to get, who fits. I'm going to put it out in the ether. I think Jeff Stoutland is going to be our O-line coach, you know, and I don't want to jinx it.
He's a giant.
It just feels like it's going to happen, right? Remember when we did our Harbaugh's a Giant episode? We just kind of knew deep down that it would just happen, even though it was stressful to the end. It kind of feels like that, right? I know it's crazy because right now they're saying they're not going to let him leave Philly. I don't know. It just feels like he's going to be a Giant, and that's how it feels deep down. And I got a good feeling on it. But if we don't get him, we'll have good coaches anyway, but we will probably have a complete coaching staff next week and we can dig into the rest of this stuff. Until we see you guys then, thank you all for being here. Remember, hit the like button, subscribe, follow us at He's a Giant Pod on Twitter. Follow Monty at MONTECRI5TO. Please follow me at Queens_guy. You can reach out to any one of us if you have any thoughts, questions. We love interacting with people. Share the episode, put good episodes into the ether. You know, put good feelings out there, get our staff together. We are on our way to a 12-5 season, so we need the best coaches we can get in here, right, guys? Until you got some closing thoughts, or are we shutting this thing down?
Yeah, shut it down. We hit 2,000, everyone. So thank you all for being here.
Love you guys. We will see you next week with a full coaching staff and the greatest O-line coach in the history of the NFL in Giants blue. Till then, go Giants.
Go Giants. Go Stoutland.
Go Stoutland.